Jessica Dishon, the high school senior, when she disappeared from her home on September 10th.
Jessica, a senior at Bullitt Central, was found in the woods, strangled to death just 7 miles from her home. That was in 1999.
Who knew her family had to wait 15 years for justice to be served?
Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.
Jessica Dishon was born on May 2nd, 1982. She lived in the small southern town of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, a farming town 20 miles from Louisville. Jessica lived with her parents, Edna and Michael, and her 2 younger brothers. Jessica was described as a very responsible girl who wanted to go to college to become an accountant. She was very close to her family, so everyone was heartbroken when she disappeared into thin air. On September 10th, 1999, Jessica's mom, Edna, came home around 1 p.m. Jessica's car was in the driveway and her mom thought that was strange because Jessica should have been at school until 2:30 p.m. She went inside to look for Jessica and there was no sign of her. She called her husband Michael and he said that he didn't know why Jessica wouldn't be at school. Edna was worried and went to search her car. Inside her car was her cell phone, purse, backpack, and one of her shoes. Jessica's father, Michael, looked at her phone and saw the number 9 and 1 typed on the dial. It was very obvious that Jessica was trying to call 911, probably because she needed help. Her mother called the school and found out that Jessica never arrived that day. The family was worried and they started calling everyone they knew. No one had seen her. Jessica's parents went to the police station that same day in the evening. At that time, there was only one deputy rookie present in the sheriff's department, David Greenwell. He said that their daughter may be pranking them. A senior detective was also involved. He claimed that Jessica must have run away from home and will turn up soon enough. None of the cops took things seriously, but David Greenwell understood that there was something off. On the very next day, he visited the crime scene himself. He did his best being a rookie in the department by taking pictures and keeping the scene safe. But he failed to do so because he was new to being a detective. Greenwell didn't wear gloves and let people from the public and media visit the scene. This way, the crime scene was contaminated, as the police weren't bothering themselves with this case, so community stepped up. The locals searched for Jessica because her family needed help. Jessica's family kept on believing that she was kidnapped as she wasn't a person who would just leave home. Jessica's father claimed that though it was hard for them, they had to find their daughter because the police wasn't doing enough. From this moment onwards, without any clues, finding Jessica was really hard. Michael said that one time during the search when his brother got sick and threw up, they had to stop looking and took him home. Stanley, Jessica's uncle, thought that if someone killed someone in town, most probably they would throw the body in the river bottoms. Everyone kept focusing their attention on there, but it was no use. While in the Bullitt room, river bottoms were considered a scary place and most of the bad things happened there. After some days, Jessica's brother Chris came running into the house saying that he had heard her yelling for help. Her father immediately grabbed his gun and ran towards there. Stanley also joined his brother to search nearby, but guess what? It was only a fire set by a neighbor for burning clothes. Thinking that this was a bit suspicious, he asked Bucky's property to be searched, to which Bucky refused. Michael called the police as well for investigation, but he didn't allow the police to search his property. Finally, the warrant had come. They found nothing but work gloves under a cushion that smelled weird along with a rope in his work van. Things looked suspicious but weren't enough to arrest him. Jessica's family is helpless and frustrated with the police, so they got the FBI involved. Afterwards, the police also started taking the case more seriously. An $18,000 reward was offered for any information regarding Jessica or her abductor. An official investigation was started by searching Jessica's car, but since it was sitting in her family's driveway, all the evidence inside and around it was messed up. A lot of people, including family, friends, volunteers, and media, had touched it. The good thing is that the police noticed the signs of struggle near the driver's side of the door, which made them ponder that Jessica was kidnapped. As the days passed, the FBI concluded that Jessica was most likely abducted by someone she knew. When they looked again at Bucky's farm, they found a small photo of Jessica. But guess what? This wasn't enough to arrest them. All the signs of someone pulling her out of the car, her losing her shoe, breaking her seat, and dropping her keys led to a familiar person. But who? On September 27, 1999, 17 days after Jessica disappeared, a bus driver, identified as Karen Bobbs, found something odd while driving her usual route in the river bottoms. She claimed that she saw a body beside a tree and called 911. When police arrived, they found the body of a young woman in the mentioned area near Salt River. The body was partially clothed with a rope around her leg and painted silver, red, and gray. Her hair and body fluids were also found, but due to decomposition, it was hard to identify it. The sheriff's department informed Jessica's family about this discovery. Jessica's father couldn't bear to identify the body, but Edna, by looking at the body's tattoo, class ring, necklace, and dental records, confirmed that it was her daughter's body. After Jessica's body was found, her parents thanked the community for their help and support. Michael said that Jessica was sweet and innocent. Later, an autopsy revealed that she was killed about 3 days after the abduction. Jessica suffered blunt force trauma to her face, was strangled to death, and was sexually assaulted. But there was no test to prove this all. Bucky, being the main suspect from the very start, was seen around the van where Jessica was found, but the alibi kept changing. However, Bucky failed the polygraph tests, but still got charged with capital murder. The trial started in January 2003, and the prosecutors announced the death penalty upon him. The Dishon family hoped for justice, but the trial didn't go as planned. The evidence got mishandled, and Detective Charlie Mann mentioned the failed polygraph test that eventually led to a mistrial. Charges against Bucky were dropped in September 2003 due to lack of evidence, and Jessica's case went cold for 15 years when no one is a suspect. Edna and Michael went through a tough time after their daughter's murder and failed trial. This not only affected their mental health, but their relationship as well. After quite a long duration of time, Detective Lynn Hunt, who was said to specialize in solving such cold cases in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, decided to reopen the case after receiving a call from a former colleague. Lynn discovered that the investigation was poorly handled and lacked sufficient evidence. She also found that Bucky was a person with a low IQ. He probably hadn't understood the questions asked by the police, which led to the misconduct. This was a lot to handle for the Dishon family, as they were already in grief about the tragic death of their lovely daughter, but the real shock was about to come.
Jessica died in 1999. This year is 2015. So we face obstacles when we begin prosecuting a case like this.
Well, in 2013, an inmate came forward, claiming that Stanley, Jessica's uncle, was responsible for her murder. The inmate also provided details about the crime that only the perpetrator could have known, involving Stanley, who happened to be Jessica's uncle. Stanley had a history of abuse, making the allegation even more serious than before. During the investigation, Detective Lynn found a bedsheet in an abandoned barn that resembled one of Jessica's beds.
There laid what appeared to be a sheet that matched her comforter that was tattered and deteriorated, and he was behind me and I said, "That looks an awful lot like her sheet, or her sheets on the bed." And he goes, "Lynn, I don't know, her room's still the same."
Further linking her uncle to the crime. Despite Stanley's claims of innocence, he eventually accepted the Alford plea, a type of guilty plea in which the defendant does not admit to committing the crime, but agrees that the prosecution has enough evidence to obtain a conviction. He did acknowledge the evidence. Jessica's parents, though divorced, still wanted justice for their daughter. They came a long way, from thinking that a stranger might have killed their daughter to suspecting their family member. This wasn't easy to accept. Two prison informants have told investigators that Stanley said that he strangled his niece with a scarf to cover up a sexual relationship. In 2015, Stanley was sentenced to 20 years in prison for manslaughter and other related crimes.
Very sad day because Stanley Dishon in court made an admission that he took the life of Jessica. She was a 17-year-old. Didn't need to die that way.
Jessica's parents expressed deep sadness and disappointment with the sentencing, and they had hoped for a harsher punishment. Nothing could bring Jessica back, but they wanted her murderer to go through the same pain that she would have felt while dying. A death penalty would do justice, but this wasn't the case for Jessica's murderer. Stanley paused briefly that Thursday before accepting a plea deal that pronounced him guilty of manslaughter in the high-profile death of his niece, Jessica Dishon, a move that ended a 15-year search for her killer. She wanted to tell a boyfriend that she was seeing at the time about the sexual abuse and rape, so he decided to go ahead and kill her, Lynn said. The signs of escaping in the car, the dialed 911 revealed that Stanley killed Jessica just after she threatened to expose the abuse that she had suffered in his hands. This truth sheds light on the tragic circumstances surrounding Jessica's death. Bucky Brook indeed was innocent in this whole scenario. He had been falsely accused in the connection with the case and passed away in 2021. His wrongful accusation led to a heart attack and impacted him until his death. Following Stanley's guilty plea, the Bullitt County Sheriff's Department held a press conference to address the case. Captain Murdoch emphasized that Stanley was the sole perpetrator in Jessica's murder, a sentiment echoed by those involved in the investigation. Gary Huffman's inquiry during an unrelated interview led to an inmate's disclosing Stanley's confession about the murder, which was corroborated by another inmate's testimony. Family members then remembered Stanley's suspicious behavior around Jessica's disappearance, while investigators noticed his deceitful conduct during questioning. Stanley's criminal history included prior convictions for sexually abusing young girls, underscored his relation to such crimes. Court records revealed a disturbing altercation in which Stanley choked Jessica during an argument, further solidifying suspicions. An inmate who served time with Stanley disclosed Jessica's intention to expose his history of sexual abuse because she had a boyfriend at the time as well, a revelation that potentially triggered the tragic confrontation. It's the end, but it's still not what we wanted. Edna Jett, Jessica's mother, said, "It took about 17 years of my life away from me. When he killed my daughter, and I said from day one, when the man was caught who killed my daughter, I would see him hang." In 2002, 3 years after Jessica's murder, Stanley was charged with sexually abusing 2 other girls, including another niece, who were ages 8 and 10. The family suffered a lot because of Jessica's death. They had to wait 15 years to find out what happened to her. Even though Stanley was sent to jail, the family still felt sad because they had lost Jessica. It was a very difficult time for them. It's still impossible for Edna and Mike to fathom the man that they allowed to stay in their home, their family member, did this. To think you give someone a place to stay and they turn around and this is what happens, Jett said. It's just hard to deal with. Holding the pain. Jessica's family says that they at least have a little closure now that they know that he's in prison. That brings us to the sad, tragic ending of Jessica Dishon's case, 1979. For more videos like this, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.